Today I want to talk about a fuel pump. Now, this is a special fuel pump. It comes out of a 2001 Ford Windstar minivan SC Sport, a 3.8 liter V6. Now, this fuel pump is what's called a returnless fuel system. I don't know how many people have ever heard of that. But a returnless fuel system is different than like a fuel system off of a van like over there. It normally doesn't need a return line because there's a computer that uses special accurate configurations that allow it to use just the right amount of gas, so it doesn't need to return any gas to the fuel tank. Now, with everything, there's always a chance you might get too much gas in the fuel line and you might have to return some of it to the fuel tank. That's why they have this. This is a return line. Okay? This one is the power side. The gas that goes to the engine. This one is just in case too much gas is put out, it can return through here. Now, I know a lot of times you might have a fuel pump that you think is bad, you test it and it doesn't want to work, so you think to yourself, well, I don't want to pay $200 or $150 for a new fuel pump. I'd rather just, wish I could just replace just the pump and not the sending unit. Because this is a sending unit. See a little float right there? Well, you can rebuild them. The only bad thing is if the sending unit is a couple years old and it's starting to mess up, then you're not going to be able to tell how much gas is in the tank. So it's either replace the whole thing or not be able to tell how much gas is in the tank. Now sometimes the float works well enough that you don't need a new float, and in which case if you want to rebuild it, in this one you have a few little screws that hold this pump together. You take those screws out, it pulls apart. There is the pump. This is a fuel pump. Now here is where the positive and the negative hook up to power the pump. This is where the pressure and the gas gets forced out. When this pump kicks on, inside there's like a little tiny motor inside this metal casing that sucks the gas through this filter up into here, and it shoots pressurized gas anywhere from 40 to 60, maybe a little bit higher. Gas pressure comes out here in this big hole right here. This fuel pump pushes inside there like that. This gas hose right here hooks to this top piece of the connector. High pressure comes through here, up, shoots out to the fuel rail, and that's what starts the engine. So basically you just unplug it. You just unplug the fuel pump. You get a brand new one, you bring it home, you plug the new one in here, you put it in the case, make sure not to damage any hoses or any gaskets. If you get new gaskets, put new gaskets on because you don't want to reuse anything old if you don't have to. Put the case back together, put the bolts in, and then you plug in your wire harnesses and your gas lines. Make sure that this thing pushes down like that, because the purpose of these springs that push the sending unit, compresses it, the purpose of the compression is sometimes the gas tank might swell up or get thinner or whatever, and when a tank goes from this to that or goes from that to this spring helps to compress the tank, helps to compress the pump. So if the tank goes from this and the tank gets smaller, it can compress the fuel pump so it doesn't break the fuel pump. That's why you need those springs there. And make sure you wipe off all the dirt on top. If they have any O-rings like this one right here, you might see, put new rings on, and then you just slide it in the tank, plug everything in, and you're ready to go. Now I want to talk about testing them for a minute. A lot of times you might think to yourself, well, I wonder if the fuel pump is bad or if it's just stuck and it needs maybe a little bit of oil down it. Well, if you take the pump out, there's a positive and a negative terminal. Now you have to understand amperage. If this pump doesn't need any more than, let's just say, 60 amps, and you put 65 or 70 through it, you're going to burn it up. It's that simple. You're going to see smoke come out and it's not going to be worth anything. So if you have like a small mower battery, something that doesn't have a lot of amps to it, and you can regulate the amperage, you can plug in power directly to the pump and see if it kicks on. If it tries to kick on, you might be able to just run some oil and gas through it, like 2-cycle engine oil. Run some of that through it and let it loosen it up, and you might be able to reuse the old pump. And then again, you might not be able to, you might have to buy a new one. You can also, if the pump kicks on, hook a pressure tester to it. If the pressure is what it's supposed to be, the pump kicks on and everything is fine, then it's not a bad fuel pump. It's something else. Somewhere it's not getting gas. So, try testing it first. Don't just replace it because, hey, car won't start, so it has to be a gas problem. I've seen a lot of people make that mistake too many times. So test it. Make sure that the pump needs to be replaced. If it does, there are 2 different ways of replacing it. Buy a whole new sending unit, or buy a pump and just rebuild the sending unit. Just put a new gasket, new pump, and that kind of stuff in, and you reuse the old sending unit. Those are 2 things you can do. Also, with a fuel pump on a returnless fuel system, if you look underneath the hood, like if someone says, well, try checking the fuel pressure regulator, and you open the hood and you look and you look and you can't find the fuel pressure regulator, don't get upset about it, because guess what? You're not going to find one. Okay? Returnless fuel systems do not have a fuel pressure regulator. They have a voltage regulator that's built into the fuel pump. The voltage regulator is what adds more or less gas to the engine based on how much voltage is being pulled. Okay? So, no fuel pressure regulator, voltage regulator. Look it up. Read about it. Very interesting.